Hi, I'm Carol.
And I'm Carolyn.
And I teach high school English.
And I teach high school theater.
And when we're not producing our own shows or dealing with the drama of the drama,
we are out and about seeing theater all over New Jersey, professional shows, and even community theater.
Right. And this week we got to see Crumbs from the Table of Joy at the South Camden Theater Company.
Yes, which was written by Lynn Nottage. And I have to tell you, it's a great story. It's a man who was recently widowed. He has two teenage daughters, and he moves up from Florida to Brooklyn.
When his wife dies.
Right, when his wife dies.
Yeah.
And his sister-in-law shows up, and because she made a promise to, I think, their mother, actually.
The grandmother.
That she would take care of raise the girls.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he is involved with this minister,
Father Divine,
and following him. And the sister-in-law, Lily, is a communist.
Well, she wants to be a communist.
Right.
I don't know that she ever really. I don't know if you ever know if she's really in the Communist Party.
Right.
Right. Because jumping to the end of the play, when Ernestine goes to look for her, where she told her the Communist Party was is just a bar in Harlem.
Right. And I think what we haven't said is that the play is set in 1950.
Right.
And it deals with a lot of things that were happening. The first thing that there's a great projection that tells us that's 5 years after World War II.
Yeah.
And it deals with racial issues in Brooklyn. It deals with interracial marriage.
The wife is German, so there's that World War II piece.
Yes.
And the Hitler piece. And the other piece. So first of all, I loved this play. Like Lynn Nottage, who is the playwright, might be my new favorite playwright. I've sort of been paying attention to who she is. I saw Sweat this week also. She wrote Sweat was her. She's been writing. So Crumbs from the Table of Joy was written in 1995. So the play is over 20 years old.
Yes.
And you sort of see this development of hers. Like there were pieces of it that I kept thinking I might want a little more. And then when I saw Sweat, which was the play that made her not only a literary success, but also made her commercial success.
Yes.
Right? It was on Broadway. It kept getting extended and extended and extended. She won a Pulitzer for it. So when I saw sort of the beginning of her career this week, and then the end, well I don't want to say the end, but where she is now in her career, it was sort of remarkable to kind of see how she has now really taken these themes of these sort of marginalized people. Because while Sweat dealt with race, it was not about race. It was about while Crumbs from the Table of Joy didn't deal with labor unions, it dealt with labor unions, right? So you kind of see this connection going back and forth. And I think she's incredible. The beauty of the language, the character she creates, this sort of moving back and forth from, in the play itself, with Ernestina.
Well, the main character, Ernestina, is a teenager. The character Ernestina actually breaks the fourth wall many times throughout the play to tell us the story. And we were talking about this on that it reminded me of To Kill a Mockingbird too, because you have this and we talked about this, a child who's narrating it, but it's from
her adult perspective.
Because as you said, it was a memory play.
It's a memory play, right.
Right. And so she keeps coming out and giving us information we need about what's happening in that moment that we just watched.
Well, and what else she does that I thought was really incredible. It's part of the play, but the way I thought they did it at South Camden was really exceptional. So they have it. Ernestina is obsessed with movies.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Oh,
and that's
God, I
all
love that.
And all she wants to do is go to the movies. So they have it so that when she comes out to break that fourth wall, it's the flickering of the film and the light around her so
Right,
that she's
that
like
was-
in the movies. and there's several times, like the one time when Marlena Dietrich is standing there,
yeah.
right, and she'll say, and that's the way it happened. And then she takes a step back and says, or it should have, right? Because, and then you sort of start wondering what really happened, what's part of her imagination. And I just thought that for me, as part of the play and the way that Connie Norwood directed it, was just awesome.
Yes, and I thought that it's a huge part for a young woman to handle. But it was played by Jabrea Anderson, who's 15 years old, and she is consistently telling the story and interacting with the other characters.
Right.
And she did such a phenomenal job at that, but also understanding who this young lady is.
Right.
And, I always tell my high school kids, you need to understand what your objective is in the scene, what your relationship with the other characters are, because it's never going to be the same with each person at every moment. And she did such a beautiful job with her relationship with her father, with her relationship with her Aunt Lily, with her relationship with her sister, and then with her stepmother.
Gert.
Right.
Right, yeah. And what I really liked about her was she's the good girl, right? And Ermina, who is the younger sister,
right,
is sort of is sassy, right?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
She and there was some times when we were watching it that she rolls her eyes, and I laughed out loud. I don't know if it was appropriate to laugh out loud, but it was just sort of that where she's like sucking her teeth and rolling her eyes, and I was like, that's a typical 15-year-old girl.
Oh yeah, because we see them
all the time, right?
All the time.
And she is more adventurous than Ernestina, up to the end of the play, and then at the end of the play, you sort of see this change in Ernestina. But up until that point, there's a great line where Ermina is standing on the stage and she's popping out all of these old jazz terms, like bebop and all that. And Ernestina looks at the audience and says, and Ermina was learning the language of the streets, sort of like letting us know that she was having this transformation into, they're not country. Ermina especially is not a country girl from Pensacola, Florida anymore. She's becoming more, she's interested in boys, she's
right. I just I thought they were terrific together. One of my favorite characters was Lily. The character of the aunt, and she was played by Wendy Smith, who was just phenomenal.
She was, and you have this. You're not dying on me, are you?
I'm recovering from bronchitis, 3 weeks of bronchitis, so we're just gonna ignore my coughing, and I've
been ignoring it for 3 weeks.
I know you have. But Wendy Smith, who played Lily, she comes in. When you first meet her, I felt that she had a very disconnect to the family.
Right. Well, you learned that she left Florida.
Right,
to come up north.
Right.
And it's the time of that. It's after the Great Migration, but it's during that same time where African American people were leaving the South because of all of these opportunities in the North, and they were going to Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, and all those places. So you kind of get the feeling that that's when she came up, was during that time.
Right. But then because at first I thought, what is she doing? What is she doing here? Why is she really here? Is she really here? Well, she's here because she doesn't have a place to live. I mean, that's reality. You find out that she doesn't have a place to live. Right. But also then suddenly you see, especially in the second act, that her relationship to the two girls has changed dramatically.
Changed her too, to a certain point.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the whole thing with the suit. What was that on Saturday Night Live? Billy Crystal used to say, "Doesn't matter if you." I'm going to mess it up. Look good. How you feel as long as you look. As long as you look good.
Right.
And that's her. She's got this very expensive suit, which we find out she sells all her clothes for money later because she can't afford it. But that was, she was the character, she was the glue for me.
See, and I felt that way about Ernestina. Like my connection was much more to her than it was to Lily.
Oh,
Now,
see, I just
what I really liked with Lily was the relationship that she ended up having with Gert, the white
Yes,
German wife.
the German wife.
So Godfrey, who is the father, kind of picks up this woman on the subway. And she's lost. I mean, she's here. She came here looking for something, or a family or something, and can't find them. And she's lost on the subway. And, she, because she's German, doesn't have the understanding of the whole racial piece.
No, not at all. Right.
And she touches him, and he kind of cringes and says, "Lady, look, I don't want any trouble."
Right.
And then instantly there's sort of this connection between them. And the next thing you know, he's gone for 3 days, and he comes home and he's married to her.
Right.
And Lily is not happy that he's married to this white woman. And, but the two women come to tolerate each other.
Yes, they do.
And you have these things like when Lily says to her, can you give me a cigarette? And there are all these rules in the house. You can't smoke, you can't drink, you can't have sex. Because Father Divine says you can't do all these things. And Lily knows that Gert has the cigarettes hidden, and Gert gives her the cigarette.
Right.
And that's that sort of understanding between these two women, that their circumstances aren't really that much different from each other.
And I thought that was a really interesting relationship when we had all these people living in this very small apartment.
Right. And it's a female play, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Godfrey is there.
Godfrey, who was played by Eric Carter, who was wonderful.
He was great. That opening scene where Ernestina, they're at the funeral. That very opening scene, and what she says is, death made my father cry like a banshee, and he lets out this sort of wail.
Yeah,
that was, and then immediately the play just starts.
And the title of the play, because he has cookies in his pocket all the time because he works at a bakery. So, but their last name's Crumb.
Right.
So it took me a while to realize, where the title was coming from.
Well, the title comes from, and I wrote it down because I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
From a Langston Hughes play.
Oh, okay.
And interestingly enough, the title of the play is called Lucky. All right. And you kind of get the feeling that this family is anything but lucky.
Right.
Right. And so when I looked it up because I wanted to see where that I thought it did, but I wasn't 100% sure. I thought I had read this poem at some point. And the lines to the poem are, sometimes crumbs fall from the table of joy, sometimes a bone is flung, to some people love is given, the others only heaven. And that sort of sums up this family. They're all searching for something. And Godfrey's searching for comfort from after his wife is dead. Gert is searching for escape from the Nazis. Lily's just searching, right? Like she's just searching. And, Ermina is searching for this identity of being a city girl. And Ernestina is, she's trying to just find herself. And she's the first one to graduate from high school. And there's this whole thing about her making a dress because her mother promised her.
Right. And she has the pattern that her mother bought her.
Yep.
And there was that moment when they stole the lace because they couldn't afford the lace. They couldn't
afford it, right. And it's Ermina who steals
the lace, right.
Because Ernestina wouldn't do that.
That was a really... The dress was on stage most of the second act.
Yes.
So it almost, to me, it represents their mother, who's missing from this family dynamic.
Right.
Because the way that Lily interacts with this mannequin, and the way Gert interacts with the mannequin, you get the sense of, and that, in my opinion, is director's choice.
Right.
Connie Norwood, who directed this, did such a fabulous job, fabulous job. Yeah. But the way they interacted with that tells you their relationship with this woman who's obviously still a huge part of this family, but is not.
It's not there.
Present.
And you never really know how she dies.
No, you don't.
There's this sort of, sometimes you think, okay, she just got sick and died, but then there's a conversation between Lily and Godfrey that sort of makes it seem like there was some other reason that, maybe that I don't know if she killed herself or whatever.
Right.
And there's also this sort of hint between Lily and Godfrey that there was a relationship between them before.
My impression was that maybe he liked the sister Lily first and then ended up marrying his wife, and that there was unfinished business between them. Which never really happened.
And she keeps talking about the juke joint, like that night, when we were. Don't you remember? At the juke joint, So there's that. He's sort of this peripheral character that is the connection to everybody, but is not the connection to everybody. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense,
right? You know what I'm saying?
But I don't know. What I want to talk about now is their production, South Camden's production of this. So. A phenomenal cast.
Well, I got to say it again. Bob Bingaman did a great job on that set.
The set is so the space. It's a small space, so you have to get your tickets right away because they don't have a lot of seats. But it's a small space, and what they managed to do in that space is pretty amazing. So they have the unit set of the home, but then they brought in this piece for
the subway.
And then they also brought in this table for
some banquet.
The missionary with Father Divine, which he didn't show up. And then, the door and where it was positioned. But what I loved, which my husband hates when I do in shows,
is the coming up
is
and down the aisle.
They were making the entrances through the house to get to this door. And I thought, it gave me as an audience member a moment to watch them kind of before they just react to what they're walking into. Well, you see Lily standing out there first, hesitating, and she leaves her bag out there. You see Godfrey coming with Gert, and there's the hesitation. He's got to bring her into the house with his family. You see the girls out on the stoop. It just.
Well, and it looked like, we talked about the door was distressed, right?
Right.
There's like pieces of marble. There's a canopy archway over the door. I mean, it looks authentic, right?
Oh, and the kitchen, the refrigerator, the pieces on the kitchen table. It never looked. It was a small apartment, but it never looked crowded on stage.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, and there was a mailbox that had mail in it. It was very, Bob, I think I said
attention to detail on the set is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And also the projection. So behind, and they had this huge picture of Father Divine.
Right.
On the mantelpiece of the fireplace. But then they used projection to kind of help tell the story as well behind the set, which I thought was fantastic.
Right, and I'm curious to how much that was in the script,
right,
and how much that was
Connie's
choice. Because last night at Sweat, or the other night at Sweat, there was a lot of production. Like, there were TV screens all around, and there were different things happening on each TV screen.
That's kind of where theater is now, to help tell the story and tell the story.
But I wonder if Lynn Nottage puts that in her scripts.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if that's a part of the script.
I thought what Connie also did really well was choice of music. So they listened to the radio quite frequently.
Yeah.
And there was music between set changes that I thought was just really good choices.
You had Billie Holiday,
right,
you had Nat King Cole, there was this sort of, they were appropriate.
And Lily talks about Charlie Parker. So you have Charlie Parker.
Right.
So there was the music really kind of helped set mood, and I helped to kind of move the story along in between the scenes. Well,
it kind of gave background to what was happening, right? Like, that's sort of how I saw it, was this background. And there is also, the radio, you're not allowed to play the radio on Sundays,
right,
and, the radio they would turn the radio on, and then they'd have to turn the radio off, and you could hear the TV. This is what I thought was really well done. So there's neighbors upstairs, the Levies upstairs, and the girls want to go upstairs and watch TV with the Levies, and Godfrey won't let them because they're white. And there's this sort of understanding. They're like one of the only black families living in Brooklyn at the time, and
in this
he's
building,
like, I can't let you go up and every night and spend every night with this white family. But you can hear the TV, like you can hear the TV through the wall, right. In the apartment. And I thought that was sort of a detail that could have easily not have.
Right. I think in terms of the relationship between the characters, the use of the set, the blocking, all that Connie did was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
You felt like you were part of their life.
Well, and you got to know these people, and you got to care about them.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So the ending of the play for me was this very poignant moment for Ernestina. So Ernestina graduates, and she has on her dress, and she is going to Harlem after she's going to go to Harlem to look for her Aunt Lily, or to follow her Aunt Lily. And she gets to this address that she was given for the Communist Party, and she kind of says to her father, like, it's time for me to go out and find my own place, right? Mm-hmm. And she goes to this address, and it's a bar. And she said they all knew Aunt Lily, but had nothing to do with the Communist Party. And so you kind of get this understanding that Lily sort of had this sort of life that this sort of dark life, right, in this bar. And Ernestina says, I had a drink, and they were nice to me, and she goes out looking for herself, and she ends up staying in Harlem. And at the end, the epilogue is she comes out and she's talking about, I could tell you that 5 years from now Ermina gets pregnant and goes back to Florida. 5 years from now, she identifies Lily's body, all that. She said, but I'm not going to. And it sort of goes back to those times where she's saying, well, this could have happened, but it didn't. Right. So you don't know, did that happen?
Really happen, or did it not happen?
Is it part of her? But when she's standing there, and this is when I think, for me, the actress became the character. Okay, and that in this moment is when she's standing there, and she said, but for right now, I'm just walking and riffing and walking, right? And it was this whole idea that she's just making it up as she goes along, because she doesn't really know what she's been doing.
As teachers, we talk about point of view and voice a lot. So you don't know, is the story true? Is
it not true?
Right. And I know that Connie Norwood shows the play. She likes these historical types of stories, but really, you don't know. This is one character's version of the story. That's really. By the end of the play, you're like, okay, did that all really happen, or maybe it did not happen?
Right, and that was sort of when I was sitting there, and she was talking about walking and riffing. And in jazz, riffing is when they're making it up, right? There's no notes, there's no music, and they're just making it up. And she's in this moment making it up as she goes. Now, we know that she's making up what her future is going to be, because she doesn't have a clue. She's trying to find it. But there's this sort of understanding, this is her version of this story. Is it the real version of the story? And I loved it. I really did.
I loved it too.
I absolutely loved it.
And everybody should
go see it.
Go see Crumbs from the Table of Joy at South Camden Theater Company.
Yeah.
And
can we eat? Yes, it's pumpkin.
Yeah. So big thank you to Grateful Bites for our fall pumpkin cake.
Spice. Mm-hmm. All right.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
All right.